The chair recognizes the honorable member for Long Island.
Thank you. Mr. Deputy, I thank you, Mr. Deputy. Mr. Deputy, I stand proudly today as the voice of the resilient and hard-working people of Long Island. Mr. Deputy, as I begin, I want to extend thanks to a few people on the island. My grandfather wasn't doing well on the weekend, and so on Saturday, he had to be seen by the health personnel at the Sims Clinic. I want to thank Nurse Charity, who went out with him on Saturday, and then on Sunday morning, he again wasn't doing well, it wasn't improving, and I got in contact with the senior nursing officer on the island, who facilitated the doctor and another nurse going down to the Dedmanski Clinic, where they received him. I want to thank Bobby and Brenda Lee Wells, his neighbors, who took him from home to the clinic in Dedmanski. And I want to thank Dr. Shanique McCarty, Nurse Oprah Davis, and of course, Senior Nursing Officer Jessica Stubbs. I want to thank him because he's doing much better since they saw him on Sunday. Mr. Deputy, I also want to extend a happy retirement to Ms. Karen Knowles, who retired after 42 years, longer than I've been around, of service as an auxiliary nurse at the Sims Community Clinic. Mr. Deputy, today I got some word that my chairwoman, my association chairwoman, and one of my key generals, Ms. Joanne Knowles, wasn't doing well. I believe she's seeing doctor now, and I just want to express to her my well wishes. Mr. Deputy, I also want to wish Ms. Iris Pinder, not Ms. Iris Pinder, Ms. Iris Farquharson of Apple Pond, Edmondski, a happy birthday, happy 92nd birthday. Yes, sir. Before I continue, Mr. Deputy, I want to let these two individuals, Ms. Prescola Knowles of the Sims Post Office and Mr. Brandon Woodside of the Sims Clinic, know that I spoke to the member for Golden Gates, who has graciously informed me that she is going to look into their matter as it relates to them being their P&P letters. And so I have confidence in her. I always tell her that she is my favorite minister. And so, Mr. Deputy, I believe that she will get that done. Mr. Deputy, I also want to extend condolences to a number of persons. The family of Mr. George Constantakis of Petty's, I did that last week. To the family of Ms. Martha Knowles of Wimsey, Long Island. To Alton and his family, the family of Miss Olivia Fox, Salt Pond. To the family of Mr. Reuben Fox. To the family of Mr. Monsell Tynequest in Dedmanski, Long Island. To the family of Miss Agatha Bow, and those persons are Albert Bow, Hannah Miller and her mom, and others. Also to the family of Mr. Bryce Knowles of Mangrove Bush, and to the family of Mr. Harold Wells of Grays, Long Island. I want to also extend condolences to Yvonne and Sasha and Darius, the family of Mr. Don Bannister. Bonnie and I went to law school together. He was a police officer who served in Long Island for quite a number of years, and I know he's being funeralized this weekend. Mr. Deputy, this PLP government, and I'm going to deal with this budget before I talk about my constituency issues and concerns. But this PLP government swaggered into power on the slogan of a new day, a supposed fresh start for the Bahamas, filled with hope, opportunity, and meaningful change. But what did Bahamians get, Mr. Deputy? We got an old, tired, average day filled with the same broken promises. We got failed policies. We got skyrocketing cost of living. We got economic stagnation. We got rampant crime.
Man, you believe that?
And a government whose hallmark is to hide behind a smokescreen of spin, deflection, and public relations rather than real solutions. Mr. Deputy, their tenure has been a masterclass in mediocrity whilst pretending to be progressive. Mr. Deputy, the PLP's new day has been nothing but a nightmare, and it is time to wake up. Where's the plan to wean the country off of its dependency on tourism and build a self-sustaining modern economy? We see none. The economy remains too dependent on tourism, making it vulnerable to external shocks. For example, this U.S. tariff war that we are now having, or any U.S. recession. Mr. Deputy, Moody's pointed out that our country's economic or our revenue base is simply too narrow, that the government doesn't generate enough diverse income streams outside of VAT and tourism. So it is pretty clear that we are facing quite a number of financial struggles in the future if we do not seek to diversify. So where's the economic relief that this government promised? Where are the real jobs and opportunities for young Bahamians? Where? Inflation is eating away at every Bahamian household. The price of food, fuel, and utilities has surged under the PLP. The national deficit keeps climbing, and debt remains crippling. Their taxation policies are a disaster. A disaster, Mr. Deputy. Mr. Deputy, business owners face real red tape. They face red tape and increasingly high costs. Look at the frequent utility disruptions. Residents across the island complain about having to face inconsistent electricity and water and telecommunications outages. Mr. Deputy, as at December 31st, 2024, the government has recorded a staggering $394 million deficit, far exceeding the projected $69.8 million shortfall for the 2024-2025 fiscal year. Even with record revenue collections of over some $1.4 billion, expenditure continues to outpace income at an alarming rate. Mr. Deputy, we are facing an inflation nightmare. The taxes and increasing fees have drastically driven up our energy costs, our gas prices, the cost of groceries and toiletries and baby food, and they've put the necessities of life out of reach of everyday Bahamians.
Tax the baby, you know.
Mr. Deputy, where's the relief for small and medium-sized business? Where's the improvement to the ease of doing business, Mr. Deputy? Where's the improvement in the access to public services? Where's the overall infrastructural improvements? You see, Bahamians can't see, can't feel, and can't touch much of anything. Interestingly, Mr. Deputy, the lion's share of the increase in spending in this budget goes to the operation or goes to operational recurrent expenses. Mr. Deputy, despite PLP campaign promises to reduce crime, the Bahamas has experienced persistently high homicide rates. The Bahamas has experienced fluctuations in its murder rates over the past few years. In fact, in 2022, Mr. Deputy, there were 128 murders, the second highest in our nation's history. And guess what, Mr. Deputy?
What the highest?
The highest number of murders ever recorded in the Bahamas
In 2015?
occurred in 2015.
That's right. Who was in
146 murders
Who was in charge?
under another PLP administration.
But yet they won't put up billboards.
Mr. Deputy,
But you're on cold, boy.
in 2023, the number of murders was at 110. And in 2024, the number of murders increased by 9% from the previous year to 120. And so, Mr. Deputy, when one goes into the barber shops and move around in different social circles and different spheres, it's become clear that Bahamians are not prepared to continue with the fiction of a new day. This is yet another copy and paste budget, high spending, high borrowing, high inflation, and high taxes and fees. Every budget, Mr. Deputy, whether it's the main budget in May or June, or the midterm budget, the mid-year budget, we see enormous borrowing sprees from this government. Our children, our great-grandchildren, and our great-great-grandchildren
Listen,
will be saddled with this debt.
Y'all say y'all have record-breaking.
This time around, Mr. Deputy,
100 million.
the government is looking to borrow about $500 million in this same mid-year budget. Mr. Deputy, frankly, Mr. Deputy, this exposes our economy to future shock. What's the point of order? What's the point of order?
The chair recognizes
What's
the
the point
honorable
of order?
member for Yamakro.
You can't be the speaker and the speaker. Thank you much, Mr. Deputy. The honorable member is misleading in his speech. The administration that he was a part of borrowed, their first thing was to borrow nearly $1 billion. As a matter of fact, they borrowed an average of $1 billion a year on record. 1-point-something billion dollars. So for him to come with a couple $100 million in his speech and talk about this was unprecedented is false and totally untrue. He should correct himself. Go to a different point of reference because he is false and he should withdraw.
Mr. Deputy. Mr. Deputy. Firstly, Mr.
You
Deputy,
have no shame.
the combined amount, we can come to that, right? The member for Yamakwa does not know what he speaks. In fact, it's so bad, Mr. Deputy, in this country, in his own constituency, the member for Yamakwa is issuing Z-Bucks. So his constituents can go to the store and get a little something. I ran into someone in the store the other day, they said the Z-Bucks bounced. These are the Z-Bucks that the member for Yamakwa is issuing this to his constituents, right? That's how bad it is. That's how expensive things are. Huh? Z-Bucks. This is yours, right? The Z-Bucks. Huh? Z-Bucks. Huh? Mr. Deputy. Mr. Deputy.
The chair recognizes the honorable member for
He
Yamakro.
obviously wants to pull me into something, and wherever the member produce whatever documents he says he has is on him. But I ask him to refrain because he is going down a very dangerous and personal road. And if we want to talk about printing and which I deem could be forgery, if we go down that road, the member from Long Island has no authority to speak of any type of printing of any documents. And I ask him to withdraw, or I will go down that road with him about printed documents.
Mr. Deputy. Mr. Deputy, am I acknowledged? Mr. Deputy, this was given to me. I didn't print this. This was given to me by someone in his constituency, Mr. Deputy. This was given to me by someone. What's it for? What's the Z-Box for? Well, why didn't you say what the Z-Box are for? Huh? Why didn't you say what the Z-Box are for? This is a copy of the Z-Box. This is a copy of the Z-Box. This is a copy of the Z-Box.
That's floating money.
You know? Anyhow, Mr. Deputy. Mr. Deputy, no. This was copied. This was copied.
Disgraceful.
Now, Mr. Bring it.
Members.
Anytime, my brother. Bring it. Mr. Deputy, as I was saying, Mr. Deputy, that member should be the last to talk about inflation in this country. Mr. Deputy, Mr. Deputy, I'm not going to have this member constantly interrupt my presentation.
The
I'm not
chair
going to
recognizes the
interrupt my
honorable member
presentation.
for Yamakro.
Mr. Deputy, the member has started a fight as usual and then won't run away. He have produced a document in here, right? And the member is no stranger to producing documents, but the member has produced a document in here with my likeness, my picture on it, and I ask him, unless he can prove that that has come from myself, I have not printed any document with my face on it. So wherever he got it from, he must say, and he must take responsibility because he presents it as some type of evidence or something, which means that he has adopted it, and must table it with his name on it. So if he is not prepared to do that, then we can go down that road because he has become personal again after they are always on a point of hurt feelings. Do your speech and leave me. I'm going to grow out of it.
Mr. Deputy, Mr. Deputy, these are in the members' constituency, these Z-Bucks. These Z-Bucks. I don't know how the Z-Bucks came about. I got a copy of the Z-Bucks. Mr. Deputy, my brother, you do what you gotta do. My brother, Mr. Deputy, what's more, the borrowing and debt is higher in each year of the PLP's forecast, and when added up, it already exceeds what the F&M borrowed in 4.5 years. Their borrowing, Mr. Deputy, has exceeded what the F&M borrowed in 4.5 years. You see, Mr. Deputy, I think it has become clear to the public, Mr. Deputy, that the PLP wrote a manifesto, blueprint for change, of promises that are simply undeliverable. At present, Mr. Deputy, we see a backlog of broken promises. The reality is, Bahamians, especially family islanders, Mr. Deputy, have been dealing with broken services that we can see and feel in our everyday lives. We see never-ending lines everywhere and overflowing facilities. What is the realizable plan, Mr. Deputy, to improve our interaction with services provided by the government? Mr. Deputy, let's talk about customs. Right now, when you look at customs in the Bahamas, when someone goes to clear their items from the customs department or from the dock, we note that they are charging VAT on customs, charging a tax on the tax. And so every time Bahamians import an item, we are paying exorbitant fees. What's more, as I said, if an item is slated as duty-free, we are still paying, let's say musical instruments or baby supplies, we're still paying 10% on what the duty would have been, even though it's duty-free. That is ridiculous. How is this fair taxation? All of this has heightened the cost of living in the Bahamas. All of this. How can it be that customs can double tax? You pay your customs, and on top of the customs, you pay in the VAT. Something must be done about that. Mr. Deputy, this is a tax and spend and travel again government. Mr. Deputy, when one looks at this mid-year budget, we see no significant increase for capital spending, especially when we consider the backdrop of major road works and airports. We know that the government borrowed money from the Saudis for the airports in North Elutra and Exuma. We know this. But where will the money for the airport in Long Island come from, Mr. Deputy? I don't see an allocation here for it. Mr. Deputy, one wonders. There's a line item in the budget referring to solar-related works. Is this to pay off the company in Florida that pulled out of the solar deal with the government? Or is this for new works? We'd like to know. Mr. Deputy, the PLP's economic inheritance from the last government showed an economy on the rise. Government revenue soared since 2022, but Bahamians are barely getting basic services from the government. We know, Mr. Deputy, that in the 2022-2023, government revenue was $2.8 billion. In 2023-2024, it was $3.3 billion. In 2024-2025, it's projected to be $3.5 billion. But what should be terrifying to all Bahamians is that this government's own budget forecasts $500 million worth of government revenue increases by 2026. So we can expect that more taxes are on the way. This government projects that in 2026-2027, the revenue will be some $4 billion. Mr. Deputy, these large revenue hauls are due to taxes on taxes on taxes on the backs of the Bahamian people. Mr. Deputy, the cost of living crisis is stretching household finances to the limits. To the limits. This is a government of over-regulation and what should otherwise be a free market. The business community has been complaining. There's a general consensus that the government has been tying businesses in knots. with taxes and fees. Taxes and fees. Business confidence has been lowered. Some instances crashed. And we all know that it is not governments that create growth, it is business. It is clear that better policies must be put forth to encourage growth and a business-friendly environment. We have seen a spree of tax increases, Mr. Deputy, over the last few years. They have meted out the highest taxes and fees in the history of our country. And what happened to the promise of free electricity? Who remembers that promise? Free electricity. What's more, Mr. Deputy, they have hit the pay slips of working people hard. Working people are seeing higher taxes and fees coming out of their pay due to PLP decisions. Here's the thing. The PLP brags in here that they raised the minimum wage. Sure, they did. But then they turned around and reached into your pockets and took it back. Took it back. They took it back. And I can tell you how right now, Mr. Deputy. You see, there's been no tax breaks or fees for Bahamians. What we have seen, Mr. Deputy, is that this New Day government has rendered a number of increases across the board when it comes to taxes and fees. They've increased the price on gas and diesel. Oh yeah. There's yacht taxes and fees, that's increased, and that's had a residual impact on the people who own marinas and so on. There are higher property tax rates for foreign homeowners. That's all well and good, except that some of these folks also buy or have a lot of Polish persons working for them. There are increased boat registration fees. Everybody remembers the reaction to that. Increased driver's license fees. And you know, I was just told, someone sent me a picture a couple of days ago about a fee that was attached to the license plate itself. So I need some clarity on that, whether or not you now have to pay a yearly fee for the actual license plate. We see exorbitant plane tickets to fly between our islands. We can all remember the BPL increases, the BPL fuel surcharges. Then you have an NIB increase. You even got an increase if you want to do a Facebook ad. You got a Facebook ad tax. You see increased passport and document processing fees, increase to departure taxes. And, of course, you got a customs processing fee, another fee onto customs. And let's not forget, Mr. Deputy, the value-added tax adjustments, where 10% has been added to bread basket items, medicines, subjecting essential items to a 100% markup. Mr. Deputy, in some instances you see business license increases, and persons having to be being required in some instances to pay for 2 years at a time. We remember that and the complaints from that. And then you have that JDL fee, at 40 cents per pound on all air freight. And then, Mr. Deputy, you hear talk about potential taxes. You hear members in here have spoken about a salt and sugar tax. That's a potential tax to come. And so, Mr. Deputy, this government's fiscal policies have been nothing short of a direct attack on the poor. In a cruel bait and switch, they paraded a VAT reduction from 12% to 10%, while secretly slapping taxes on bread basket items, staple foods that the average everyday Bahamian enjoys on a daily basis. This was not tax reform. This was economic warfare on the most vulnerable among us. And so what was the result? Higher grocery bills, medicine and medicinal services or medical services costs, feminine items and baby products costs for families who could least afford it, while this government shamelessly boasted about helping the people. This put a lot on the backs of the poor, Mr. Deputy. Mr. Deputy, this government only acts when backed into a corner by public outrage. After mercilessly taxing the food Bahamians need to survive and facing public outrage and political pressure the PLP finally caved and is now scrambling to save face by slashing VAT on food items from 10% to 5%, starting on the 1st of April 2025. But let's be clear, Mr. Deputy, this is not relief, it's damage control. This reckless policy flip-flop has already drained the pockets of struggling families and will now leave a 30 million hole in government revenue. A hole they will no doubt try to fill with more hidden taxes or cuts to essential services. Instead of real leadership, we get reactionary gimmicks that expose their failure to govern with foresight or compassion. Mr. Deputy, they govern with the reflexes of a reactionary, small-time political machine, only addressing crises when public outrage forces their hand. And those who suffered most from that VAT increase, the poor, single families, retirees, and the unemployed. Mr. Deputy, many Bahamians have been forced to make brutal choices, paying bills or putting food on the table. That was the option. Why not put VAT back down to zero? VAT on bread basket items, VAT on medicine, just zero rated as it was before. Mr. Deputy, the government has spent quite a lot of time flying around, hobnobbing. They've racked up more miles than a Harlem Globetrotter with a lifetime travel pass. Mr. Deputy, at a time when Bahamians have to tighten their belts and are facing economic challenges and striving to make ends meet, it is both disheartening and infuriating to witness the current administration's disregard for fiscal prudence, particularly concerning their extravagant travel expenditures. This pattern of lavish spending is not an isolated incident, Mr. Deputy, but rather a continuation of the PLP's habit of extravagance. 58 million thus far. 58 million thus far. Mr. Deputy, and what happened to the plane that the government was supposed to be refurbishing for 2.5 million? We have not heard anything about that plane since last June. When families struggle with the rising cost of living, excessive travel should not be indulged. Should not be indulged. But, Mr. Deputy, this administration's extravagant travel expenditures are a stark reminder of their misplaced priorities. Mr. Deputy, where are the carbon credit returns? Or was that also a dream sold to the public? How much have we earned in carbon credits since 2022? How much? Mr. Deputy, I note that the government is borrowing $50 million for water and sewage. I have been adamant about WSC having control of its own reverse osmosis units and production apparatus throughout the Family Islands. This is important, particularly in an environment where WSC is being hustled and extorted by an oil provider that is simply unreasonable and seeks to shake down the government by using the threat of disconnecting the water supply to our citizens. That's a no-no. Interestingly, Mr. Deputy, during our time in office, we also sued the same company. And now I am told that persons from the side opposite are now also engaging in a lawsuit with the very same company. And Mr. Deputy, I support funding that would acquire RO plants, etc. Frankly, this is an initiative that I had launched and was something that I felt was most important as it relates to controlling our natural resources and not being extorted or taken hostage by foreign providers who appear to lack respect for our sovereignty or the needs of our citizenry. Mr. Deputy, today we are continuing a trend, though, of empty promises by the government. We all remember the much-hyped golden yolk egg scheme. Nothing has come of that. That has fallen by the wayside. That has fallen by the wayside. We haven't seen any result of that. No result since it was announced about 2 years ago. And Mr. Deputy, as someone from a farming island, I can say that farmers continue to face uncertainty under this administration. Mr. Deputy, we see quite a bit of groundbreaking, a hard here, a shovel there. Groundbreaking, let me tell you some of the groundbreakings in Long Island. We had a groundbreaking in Long Island in late 22, I think it was, or early 23, for the proposed cruise port, Calypso Cove in Gordons, Long Island. However, we have not heard anything since. A $250 million project. And then you had another groundbreaking on the 18th of March, 2024. We saw Senator Terrell Young from BAMSI came to Long Island and said they were launching a research and training facility in McCann's, Long Island. He said it would be complete in 2 months. We have heard nothing about it since. Nothing. In fact, he said the project would cost $1 million and renovations would start the next week. It has been many next weeks since. And then, of course, Mr. Deputy, you had groundbreakings across various islands for multiple different things. Lots of photo ops, lots of shovels, lots of groundbreakings. If groundbreaking was the grading standard, this government would get an A+ and a 4.0 GPA. Mr. Deputy, we're looking forward to the Long Island Airport. I met with the DPM, the member for Exuma, and he's given me some pledges. And we're looking forward to seeing if they will deliver on the airport for Long Island. That is very important for us.
It's for the people.
The airport is not for me, my brother. Mr. Deputy,
For the people.
we've seen a lot of grandstanding, a lot of shovels and groundbreaking, but we want to see something concrete now, some action. Payments are not going to fall for just digging holes in the ground. That ain't gonna work. We want to see something real. We want completed operational hospitals, completed infrastructure that will improve our lives, not just temporary political gestures. Mr. Deputy, I want to note that my constituency, we have quite a number of needs, quite a lot of needs. We've been neglected for the last 4 years. There's been a lot of talk, but very little action. Our economy has contracted by 10% over the last 4 years due to PLP policies. Our island has literally come to a standstill. We've had projects lined up that were either not done or canceled, and Long Island has not had a major government project since we left office. The economy could have grown. One who's the government. The economy could have grown by some 20 to 25%. This government, Mr. Deputy, has been disastrous for the family islands. We have seen GDP decreases in various islands: Long Island, Grand Bahama, Abaco, Maguana, Inagua, Crooked Island, Auckland, all the family islands. Pretty much you saw a reduction in GDP under PLP governance. Repeated governments, though, Mr. Deputy, consecutive governments have been too Nassau-centric, and I've lodged my concerns about that many times in this place. Mr. Deputy, as relates to Long Island, we are desperate to have road works done. I've spoken to the minister, the member for South and Central Eleuthera, and he's indicated to me that some 17 miles of roads in the pipeline, but I've said to him that we need so much more because there's so much work to be done in Long Island. Mr. Deputy, can I have another 3 minutes to wrap up?
Yeah, honorable member, I give you 2 minutes to wrap up.
A lot of folks got extra time, Mr. Deputy. You said another 3 minutes, Mr. Deputy? I'll take it, Mr. Deputy.
Wrap up.
Mr. Deputy,
Neil's got 10.
Mr. Deputy, we are desperately in need of that airport. We are desperately in need of financial inclusion, ensuring that my constituents, our people, have access to banking facilities. Right now, as it relates to health, Mr. Deputy, we have 2 ambulances in Long Island and no driver. We'd like to get drivers for the ambulances. We have a new morgue that is sitting outside in the elements due to the building being unable to house it, and so bodies from the south are still being taken to the north. We need doctors on the island because apparently there's a visiting doctor who comes to the island, but the island has traditionally had 2 doctors, one in Sims Clinic, one at Deadman Ski Clinic. We need to schedule visits by a dentist and other specialists. So, Mr. Deputy, we are in need of a number of improvements as it relates to healthcare, as it relates to roadworks, as it relates to even BTC challenges. We have a number of challenges with BTC, telecommunications issues as well. And so, Mr. Deputy, I implore the government to intervene and assist our island as best as possible, because we are tired of being treated as an afterthought by this government. We are tired of seeing ground break-ins, and we are tired of not being able to have access to the same public services that many of these other places have. We pay the same taxes as everyone else. And so, Mr. Deputy, I thank you for your indulgence. Thank you, Mr. Deputy.
Thank you, honorable member.